just spent the last million hours watching every episode of the Munsters and ranking them. Never in my life did I think I'd ever watch every episode in sequential order, but hey, I did.
Couldn't that be a little dangerous?
Mom would be proud. And now I'm going to tell you what I learned from one of the first dark comedies to hit the small screen. I'll tell you which episodes hold up, the ones you may remember from childhood, and which ones are worth skipping.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Who am I? I'm Nostalgic Nick with Do You Remember? I'm as American as candy corn on Halloween, although I cannot say I enjoyed the taste. But the candy corn pumpkins, those are different somehow. I do like those. So sit back, grab your bowl of candy corn pumpkins, and relax as we take a deep dive into the Munsters. Let's go. 1-1 Monster Masquerade. Aired September 24th, 1964. Welcome the Munsters. They're new to the neighborhood, and Marilyn's boyfriend decides that it would be a great time to invite them over to his family's costume party. But when Herman wins the award for best costume, the other guests believe he's wearing a mask over another mask.
Hey, he's wearing one mask under another mask!
Truly, this was a really fun episode to start out the show. We got our first taste of Fred's impeccable comedic timing, and we learned that to the Munsters, everyone else is kind of weird. Meanwhile, Grandpa steals every scene he's in.
Calm down. I won't. If I don't get to go, I'll sit here and hold my breath till the color comes back in my cheeks.
You're being a big spoiled baby.
There are also several hilarious scenes involving a babysitter who definitely got more than she bargained for when she agrees to watch the impish Eddie during the party. I think you'll remember this fun episode, and I'll give it 8 skulls out of 10. 1-2 My Fair Monster. Aired October 1st, 1964. Beautiful young Marilyn is very depressed because all her boyfriends keep running away. But she has nothing to fear because Grandpa is here to help. And Grandpa, of course, adds a very powerful love potion to the family's oatmeal, which everyone in the family but Marilyn winds up eating. The episode's title tells us everything we need to know about the plot, and the chase scene through the mansion's hallways gives us a generous helping of the physical comedy that makes this show so great.
My husband needs me! I need you more!
But things return to normal, or at least Monster normal, after the potion wears off. And it turns out Marilyn's date went just fine without it, and she decides she's better off just being herself after all too. Honestly, I think episode 2 picks up right where the first one left off, and I give it 9 skulls out of 10. Fantastic. 1-3 A Walk on the Mild Side. Aired October 8th, 1964. Like, well, really any other family, the Munsters get stressed out when the bills begin to stack up. You know, Grandpa's experiments require a ton of electricity, and when you have teeth like Eddie's, yeah, braces aren't cheap. So when Herman decides to stroll through the park to clear his head, the police begin to get reports of a monster on the loose.
And tell them to pick up anybody who even looks suspicious. Okay, Chief?
And to make matters worse, there's also a real mugger at large. I give A Walk on the Mild Side a not-so-mild 8 skulls. There are puns throughout the episode, and the police commissioner begins to think his officers are going crazy as they try to apprehend the creature that's terrorizing the park. There's also a ton of great sight gags when Herman encounters other people, like when he makes a woman's hair stand on end. My guess is this will be an episode that many of you remember. I mean, I always looked for Herman when we went to the park. I never did see him. Life isn't as fun as the Munsters. 1-4 Rocka Monster. Aired October 15th, 1964. Grandpa and Herman overhear Lily telling Marilyn about the arrival of a playmate for Eddie, and they don't understand why she hasn't told him yet. Herman spends most of the episode trying to get her to reveal her secret and even visits Dr. Edward Dudley in the middle of the night to get to the bottom of the story. I give Rocka Monster my very first 10 out of 10 skulls. Because it's a frightfully funny reimagining of one of my favorite I Love Lucy episodes. Herman learns an important lesson about eavesdropping, and it's the first appearance of the best center square in the business, Mr. Paul Lynde as Dr. Dudley. This is also the episode where Lily buys Herman the legendary Munster coach as a birthday gift. With the possible exception of the Batmobile, it was my favorite TV car of all time. So yeah, easy 10 out of 10. Who agrees? 1-5, Pikes Peak. Aired October 22nd, 1964. In Pikes Peak, when city planners can't get permission to install a new gas pipeline underneath the Munsters' home, they just decide to dig a little deeper. Little do they know that the Munsters have an underground dungeon. Silly city workers.
I don't intend to be intimidated by the Munsters.
I'm gonna be honest here and say this episode didn't blow me away, and I only award it 4 skulls. But hey, let's face it, the previous couple of episodes were a tough act to follow, but ultimately this was a very talky episode without a lot of action, and it all revolved around a gas pipeline. 1-6, Allstar Monster. Aired October 29th, 1964. In Allstar Monster, Herman goes on a crash diet of water and vitamin pills to fit into his old army uniform before a reunion, and gets progressively more irritable throughout the episode.
Hot fudge sauce, salted.
He does manage to fit into the uniform, but this time it's Grandpa's corset, and not one of his potions that does the trick. As anyone who's gone on a diet will tell you, the process takes much longer than a 30-minute episode. Paul Lynde is back once again as Dudley, and it's amusing to see that even the Munsters struggle with body image issues. But the thinnest part of this episode is its shop-worn plot. I guess I'm not a big fan of dieting because I give episode number 6 5 skulls out of 10. 1-7, Tin Can Man. Aired November 5th, 1964. In Tin Can Man, Herman discovers that young Eddie is struggling in school, and Grandpa decides to help him get back on track by helping him construct a life-sized robot for science fair. After a couple of maybe underwhelming episodes, it was good to see the show perform as a well-oiled machine once again. 'Cause Tin Can Man is an episode full of puns and visual gags that make the show great.
My family and I will see you then.
Good. I'll be looking forward to seeing them, face to face.
Including one scene where Grandpa is repairing the robot and the squeamish Herman faints at the sight of oil. Seriously, Tin Can Man is great fun from start to finish, and I give the episode 9 skulls out of 10. 1-8, Herman the Great. Aired November 12th, 1964. Herman Monster secretly becomes a professional wrestler to raise money for Eddie's college fund, and is stronger than anyone else who enters the ring. Unfortunately and kinda beautifully, the kind-hearted Herman feels sorry for his opponents and lets them all win. Herman is truly a gentle giant with a big heart. And ironically, it's not any less absurd than anything you can see watching wrestling today. The plot's a bit of a lightweight, but the episode still packs a punch with its classic Munster humor. I give it 8 skulls out of 10. 1-9, Knockwood, Here Comes Charlie. Aired November 19th, 1964. Herman's twin brother Charlie visits, bringing along a suitcase full of wild inventions, along with a load of trouble and even more debt.
Where's Herman? He can't still be nursing a grudge against his own twin brother.
He loves you. He'll be right down.
Oh, no, he won't.
One of the inventions is a robot that can extract uranium from seawater, and the Munsters have to figure out how to stop it before it causes chaos in their already quirky household. Is the world truly ready for 2 Herman Monsters? Maybe, but probably not. The episode is loaded with over-the-top antics, and it's fun to watch Fred Gwynne pulling double duty cause Fred's a really fine actor. That's why I give this one 8 skulls out of 10. 1-10, Autumn Crocus. Aired November 26th, 1964. In Autumn Crocus, Grandpa gets lonely and contacts a dating service in his quest to find bride number 168.
Her name is Lydia Gardner. She was quite impressed with my picture.
Dang, that's more than Larry King. Unfortunately, he's soon matched with a gold-digging Black Widow, who has something far more sinister in mind. Grandpa is one of my favorite characters, probably a lot of our favorites, and it's fun to watch him experience the same trials and tribulations we all suffer when we fall for the wrong person. But the Munsters are always kind to a fault and see the best in everyone they meet. This one has more of a mature vibe to the episode, but it's always cool when they sneak in a few jokes that are especially for Mom and Dad. Anywho, I give this episode 8 skulls and wish Grandpa better luck next time. 111, The Midnight Ride of Herman Monster. Aired December 3rd, 1964. In The Midnight Ride of Herman Monster, Herman falls asleep in the family's Cadillac, and a gang of bank robbers mistakes him for their getaway driver, Big Louie, when they steal the car. It's hard to imagine Herman being mistaken for anyone, but the role of Big Louie was originally written for the 6'5" Mike Mazurki. But the 5'11" former boxer Maxie Rosenblum has no trouble measuring up, and even Lily can't tell the difference when Louie shows up at 1313 Mockingbird Lane, and Herman might be the only getaway driver who actually stops at red lights. This episode has some great hilarious mistaken identity bits and plenty of action.
He's a great big goon, supposed to be a regular monster.
Excuse me, but I seem to be lost.
9 skulls out of 10. One of my favorites from season 1. 112, The Sleeping Cutie. Aired December 10th, 1964. When Marilyn has trouble sleeping, she accidentally takes the wrong potion and falls into a deep sleep that even Grandpa's magic can't wake her from.
And you want me to kiss her?
Well, you can close your eyes.
The Sleeping Cutie is a comic reimagining of a classic fairy tale, and Herman and Grandpa make several unsuccessful but hilarious efforts to break the supposed curse.
Wonderful! Now we can go up and discuss the deal.
I personally found this episode a bit of a snooze compared to the last couple of episodes and give it only 6 skulls, but it did feature a memorable guest appearance by a pre-captain of the infamous Love Boat, Gavin MacLeod. The episode also features a funny twist ending when Marilyn wakes up, unaware of the chaos her slumber caused. 113, Family Portrait. Aired December 17th, 1964. In Family Portrait, the Munster family is chosen as the average American family for a feature in Event magazine, Sight Unseen, and hilarity ensues when a reporter and photographer arrive at the mansion to work on the story. Week in and week out, the Munsters make us all think about what normal really looks like, and that's the entire premise of this episode. The plot may be predictable, but the Munsters' antics make this a picture-perfect episode good for a solid 10 skulls out of 10.
Dope, got me doing it now. It's just your imagination.
It's also a historic episode, as it's the final appearance for Beverly Owen's short tenure as Marilyn Monster. Did you know she actually left the show because she was homesick and love-struck? She returned home to New York to get married to her out-of-state boyfriend, Sesame Street director John Stone. 114, Grandpa Leaves Home. Aired December 24th, 1964. The eternally moody Grandpa often feels unappreciated and finally decides to move out of the mansion after an argument with Herman. He gets a job as a nightclub magician and quickly discovers that life on his own isn't as easy as he thought. We see Pat Priest for the first time as the new Marilyn in the show's final few minutes, but she has no lines. The plot of Grandpa Leaves Home was a bit predictable, and I didn't enjoy it quite as much as watching Grandpa's heartbreaking journey in Autumn Crocus. But it is amusing to watch a centuries-old vampire suddenly getting homesick, and I give the episode 7 magical skulls. 115, Hermans Rival. Aired December 31st, 1964. When Lily suspects that Herman is bankrupt, she takes a job reading palms to contribute to the family finances. Unfortunately, the jealous Herman suspects that she's two-timing him and enlists Grandpa to help him spy.
Now, I've been watching Lily for the past few days. She's been leaving the house just after you do and doesn't get back until just before you come in.
We've already learned by now that Grandpa and Herman are far too willing to believe everything they're told, and their confusion is always good for plenty of laughs. I think we've all had at least one wacky misunderstanding in life too, so it's relatable to an extent. This episode does explain how Eddie inherited the werewolf gene, which answers a long-standing question. But the premise for this episode is otherwise a little thin. Ramon's reaction when meeting Herman at the end is a fun way to end the episode, which I'll generously give a 6 skull rating and a free tarot card reading to our next customer. 116, Grandpa's Call of the Wild. Aired January 7th, 1965. When Eddie wants to brave the outdoors and go camping, heck, he's braver than me, bugs are gross. The Munsters' night out in the woods puts them near a pack of wolves that gets Grandpa nostalgic for Transylvania. So, he does what any one of us would do when we're feeling homesick. Thumb through a photo album, reach out to some old friends, or turn into a magical wolf, run around some campgrounds, and get snatched by park rangers. What's a Munster to do when the problem solver of the group is in trouble? The best part of Grandpa's Call of the Wild is seeing Grandpa embrace his wild side and being the one to get into a bit of mischief. It really humanizes him, or vampirizes. Either way, it's a howlin' good episode. The plot might be a bit out there, but the humor and Grandpa's antics make it a must-watch worthy of 8 buggy stars and a can of mosquito repellent. Gotta keep at least some bloodsuckers away. 117, Allstar Monster. Aired January 14th, 1965. When poor Marilyn can't continue her college course, Herman Monster stomps in to save the day, until a case of mistaken identity gets him recruited by the basketball coach to join the team. Hey, you ever stand by a bunch of basketball players? Nothing makes a person feel shorter than all those towering athletes, you know? That's all well and good, but none of this is getting Marilyn's tuition paid. We've seen the Munsters get mistaken for all sorts of fantasy things, but this came out of left field and still makes perfect sense. It pushes the Munsters into a normal mold, and Herman's charm and lighthearted humor keep it entertaining from start to finish.
Oh. Well, thank you very much. Can I go and check?
Earning this episode 7 skulls and a gold trophy. 118. If a Martian answers, hang up. Aired January 21st, 1965. What if Close Encounters were a comedy and Frankenstein was there? Yeah, that's the fastest way I can think to sum up this perfect storm of mix-ups when Herman gets a new ham radio and hears actual Martians right on Earth's front door. Only thing is, what he picked up was actually Eddie's friends playing spacemen. Ah, but Herman is so close to a big breakthrough. He even ropes Grandpa into the mix. And look, 2 aliens. Quick, get a photo for the Air Force. Oh, no, wait, it's Eddie's friends again. Well, somebody's gonna have to break the bad news to Herman, not it. The best part of If a Martian Answers Hang Up is the delightful absurdity of Herman and Grandpa preparing for a Martian invasion. It's just a perfect blend of sci-fi silliness and Munster charm. The plot may be out of this world, but the laughs are oh so grounded in a very classic Munster episode. Plus the refreshing twist of seeing monsters freak out over something fictional. Yeah, it's a standout episode, worthy, I think, of 9 skulls and a shiny new telescope. 119, Eddie's Nickname. Aired January 28th, 1965. Ah, we've all dealt with the stuff in this episode. Eddie doesn't want to go to school cause his nickname is Shorty.
I don't care what you do to me. I won't go back even if I died.
So his well-meaning but disastrous family tries to flip the script and use a potion to make him grow. Oh, he grows all right. He grows a beard, and nothing seems to be getting rid of it. Until Herman shows there's a lot of heart in that big old chest of his, and gives Eddie some advice everyone ought to follow. The best part of Eddie's nickname is the heartwarming message wrapped in classic Munster humor. One of those solid lessons you're glad the kids are hearing early on. Plus, Herman and Grandpa's well-meaning attempts to help Eddie are both funny and touching. They do mean well after all. The plot is straightforward, but carries a timeless lesson about self-esteem that resonates beyond the laughs. And for that, I give this episode 9 skulls and a shaving kit. I really enjoyed it. 120 Bats of a Feather. Aired February 4th, 1965. It's the school pet fair. The most important day in a young student's life. A time to show off their cutest little buddy and impress all their pals. Only problem is the family bat Igor isn't feeling too cooperative. That's okay though, Grandpa can just become a bat for the fair. Except when Eddie and his friend do a weekend pet trade and Bat Grandpa ends up in a lab. Oops. This is one of the most fun ways of combining a monstrous identity with one of the best silly mix-ups the show has ever done. All in a framework that's relatable for young viewers who know the importance of themed days like that. The social hierarchy in classrooms could get complex and cutthroat. This episode gets a solid 10 skulls and an A+ on its report card. 121 Don't Bank on Herman. Aired February 11th, 1965. We really take for granted how straightforward most everyday chores are. Buying groceries, getting the newspaper. Do they even still print those nowadays? Anyway, for a Munster, even going to the bank can get messy, especially when robbers use Halloween masks to mug the place and frightened clerks hand over all the dough. Lily just wanted a few hundred, not thousands. Don't Bank on Herman is a masterclass in comedic timing, hilarious misunderstandings, and blending the average with the monstrous, which actually ends up saving the day. This episode gets 9 skulls. Don't spend it all in one place. 122 Dance with Me, Herman. Aired February 18th, 1965. Marilyn is once again down on her luck when Parents' Night ends up being a dance party. Herman Monster and dancing isn't a combination anyone's feet ought to risk. But of course Herman Monster wants to make the effort for family. It's a really sweet gesture, no matter the reasons, which makes it really stink when he gets roped into an elaborate scam. It actually hurt to see Herman Monster's plan fall apart, even if things did technically work out for everyone. He went through all that effort for Marilyn. It's heartwarming to see such heart displayed amid all the slapstick and silliness. Plus, Lily's devotion at the end sets the bar high. This episode gets 8 skulls and a new pair of point shoes. 123. Follow That Monster. Aired February 25th, 1965. Herman Monster decides to live out so many people's dreams of being a real-life detective. The covert ops, the sneaking, the disguises, the intrigue. I'm remembering all the diabolical plots my friends and I unraveled with our Talkboy recorders and binoculars. And now Herman's doing it too, except a lot of his job description looks kind of terrible on paper, especially to Lily, who's been kept in the dark. Well, in the darker dark about this and thinks he's cheating. So she gets help from an investigation agency who decide to use their new guy to solve this case. That new guy, Herman Monster, of course. You know, the Munsters always pulls off some complicated fun espionage plotline, and I'm always pleasantly surprised how well they do. This was a creative approach to a premise we've all seen before, but this show does it right with just the right amount of silliness and sweetness in there.
What's the matter?
Somebody stole my crayons. Flat on top, lantern jaw, long on side, piercing eyes, classic nose. Oder Schöner, classic nose.
Herman, will you knock it off?
And for that, this episode gets 10 skulls and a cool notepad to write spy stuff on. 124. Love Locked Out. Aired March 4th, 1965. This one's for and about the lovebirds. Herman Monster broke a cardinal rule of marriage, turning up past midnight. Lily draws a line in the sand, and the creepy couple end up at marriage counseling, who tells both of them to be the peacemaker first, which prompts a fight over who gets to be peacemaker. Don't worry, it's Grandpa to the rescue. It could really go either way. It's definitely fun to see an episode that's about Lily and Herman's relationship, and one that's not all about Herman Monster just messing something up. For all the magic in this show, this episode was well grounded in some important relationship dialogue that many of us can relate to. For this, I granted 8 skulls and a box of chocolates shaped like a coffin. For this, I granted 8 skulls and a box of chocolates shaped like a coffin. 125. Come back, little Googy. Aired March 11th, 1965. The Munsters aren't the only ones who can scare the living daylights out of other people. Eddie's friend Googy pulls one hell of a prank on the poor family, where just about everyone thinks he got turned into a chimp. Danger, Will Robinson.
What are you staring at, my little man?
I never seen a penguin smoking a cigar before.
Do you see who plays Googy? Yep, that is Little Bill Mumey. Now this episode had the cool twist of someone else deliberately messing with the Monster family. But boy was it frustrating to just watch how rude Googy could be. Hey little guy, you're a guest, mister. Show a bit of respect. So, I give this episode 6 skulls and no trip to the movies for a month. 126, Far Out Munsters. Aired March 18th, 1965. When a band pays a nice bit of cash to rent the Munster mansion, our family of fiendish monsters become like fish out of water, staying at a clean, neat, and orderly hotel. It's the kind of grotesquely clean Airbnb that Marilyn might like. I mean, where's all the dirt and monsters? What's more, it turns out their house was turned into Party Central. Best part of this one is anytime the Munsters did some performances of their own. Fun fact, that's Yvonne DiCarlo actually doing her own singing in that episode too, as if she weren't talented and amazing enough. And for that, I give this episode 6 skulls and a backstage pass to the next creepy concert. Just don't let Ozzy Osbourne near Grandpa. 127, Munsters on the Move. Aired March 25th, 1965. It's the age-old dilemma of parents needing to move due to work, and a child of said family not ready to leave. It's not easy, even for wolf boys, and especially not when Grandpa accidentally sells Munster Mansion to a bulldozing company. Honestly, this episode alone actually feels like a horror movie, just thinking about that cool house getting leveled for a parking lot or something dumb. Fortunately, things get worked out, but that was way too close for comfort. It also feels a bit soon in the show's life to get that moving out episode. But late enough in the season to at least get scared it's gonna happen. This episode gets 5 skulls due to scaring people the show was ending. I know it's a show about frightful things, but don't do that to us Munsters. 128, Movie Star Monster. Aired April 1st, 1965. Once again, poor Herman Monster gets way in over his head. Quite the feat, considering how tall the big guy is. Some scam artists convince him to be a movie star, except he's actually supposed to get in these horrible accidents he keeps on surviving. Thankfully, Lily and Grandpa have a clearer read on the situation. So basically, he's like a stuntman, which if you know anything about Yvonne DiCarlo's life, which we have a separate video detailing, her longest marriage was to a stuntman, so at least maybe Lily is gonna give Herman some extra love for this episode. And for this, I give this episode 7 skulls for quite the coincidence. 129, Herman the Rookie. Aired April 8th, 1965. When your baseball team needs an ace up its sleeve, who you gonna call? The Munsters. When Herman proves his power as an athlete, he's all too excited to join the team. Except his strength is too much for the team to handle. This dream come true turns sour pretty fast. But his family is right there to comfort him in a pretty sweet way. This sporty twist on the formula gets 6 skulls. The best part of The Rookie is seeing Fred Gwynn's larger-than-life presence on the baseball field. I'd draft him first in my fantasy baseball league, that's all I'm saying. 130, Country Club Munsters. Aired April 15th, 1965. The Munsters have a chance to get into Mockingbird Heights Country Club. Yes, the Mockingbird Country Club. Only everyone who's anyone can get in there. They just need to get through these final visits without a hitch. Well, turns out that's easier said than done, and there's only so much magic Grandpa can do that'll get them in. Seeing the Munsters in a setup like this, that's both so human but also not as relatable as some other stuff, was a refreshing spin on the formula. If the Munsters had gotten into the club, that might have been more fun to play with in this episode and later ones. But for what we got, I give it 4 skulls and a new putt-putt club. Guess I'm not a country club guy. 131. Love Comes to Mockingbird Heights. Aired April 22nd, 1965. When the Munsters get a huge pile of riches from Uncle Gilbert, they do the safe thing. Get it? The safe thing, and decide to deposit it. No word out on the exchange rate from gold doubloons to dollars in the 1960s. And oh hey, the guy who picks up the money thinks Marilyn is super cool. So pretty and nice and perfect, and they should date and elope. Definitely not just in it for the money. That's how it goes for people who are so boringly normal looking. Definitely would have been nice to see Marilyn catch a break in her love life. But this is sadly pretty real in our world too. I give props to Uncle Gilbert for cheering the family up, and give this episode 6 skulls out of 10. 132. Mummy Monster. Aired April 29th, 1965. This setup is as wacky and oh so quintessentially Munsters, when a trip to the museum goes haywire. A sleeping Herman Monster is mistaken for an actual mummy on display, and it's a fight between historians and Lily Munster to see who gets custody of the mummy, Dad. This is the stuff of dreams, a big huge mashup of real scary history, the monsters of our wildest imagination, hilarious mix-ups, and terrible timing that make for an episode that's one for the history books. This episode should also be on display for a wonderful piece of television history, and for that, it deserves 10 skulls and an exhibit of its own. 133. Lily Munster Girl Model. Aired May 6th, 1965. We were long overdue for a super Lily-centric episode. Yeah, I'm a huge Yvonne DiCarlo fan, so every episode could just be about her, but this was a welcome change of pace. In this, she decides to fill her spare time with modeling, which makes Herman jealous about all the handsome guys that'll be flirting with her. So, he and Grandpa do what anyone would do, find a pretty lady to hang out with Herman and make Lily jealous. Tonight, the role of that special someone will be played by Count Dracula. Like I said, I'll never complain about more Lily-centered episodes. It does raise some questions about what humanity gets scared of when it comes to the Munsters, but I guess Lily is easier to pass off as mostly human. I give this episode 8 skulls and a walk down the runway. 134. Munster the Magnificent. Aired May 13th, 1965. Alright, I'd like to amend my previous statement. Talent night at school is actually the most important event in a young student's life. And so to blow the competition out of the water, Eddie recruits Papa Munster as a performer. Mr. Munster actually ends up being pretty decent without any magic mumbo-jumbo from Grandpa. A little too good and a little too big in the ego. Enter Lily and Grandpa to remind him how to be so very gracious in victory. Then, when he started to sour things with his attitude, his family course-corrected him. All in all, I give this episode 9 skulls and a rabbit pulled right out of my hat. I loved it. 135. Herman's Happy Valley. Aired May 20th, 1965. Oh no, Herman Monster gets swindled. Some no-good two-timing crook puts an ad into the paper for a bit of land that ends up absolutely disgusting. Horrible, ugly, unlivable, and dangerous. Oh no, poor monsters, how did they feel about it? Oh, well, the Munsters absolutely loved everything about it. Yeah, that figures, I guess. That means they're pretty darn attached when buyers come a-knocking, and when schemers try and scare the Munsters off the property, well, that goes as well as you'd expect. The whole swerve of this episode being that the Munsters love the property that would be a total money pit to literally anyone else is hilarious. A totally genius way of incorporating that one detail about the Munsters hating neat, clean, bright homes, like that hotel from episodes back. This episode highlights what makes the Munsters so great, and so it earns 9 skulls and a deed to the most putrid swamp out there. 136. Hot Rod Herman. Aired May 27th, 1965. Rev up your engines, folks, because the Munsters present to you an episode that'll get your heart racing. Some challenges are just too irresistible, and unfortunately for Herman Monster, he's just not meant to be a race car driver, and he loses the Munster mobile in a bet. But Grandpa is not gonna let that stand, and so we witness the birth of the Dragula, a piece of gothic art on wheels, powered by Grandpa's super competitive side. We can never go wrong with more episodes putting Grandpa in the driver's seat, and that earns this high-speed episode. 9.5 skulls and a scenic ride around the haunted ruins. 137. Hermans Rays. Aired June 4th, 1965. Everybody knows a guy like Mr. Gateman, totally fine with a staff member toiling long hours with 0 extra pay. And when he asks for what he's due, Herman gets fired. Typical tyrannical boss justice. On top of this huge loss, he's also worried what Lily will say, so he tries getting all sorts of jobs that go as well as you'd expect for Frankenstein's monster. Thankfully, when Lily does find out, she's a huge help. This episode actually has that nice little piece of advice that you don't have to go through hardships alone. In fact, relying on that shoulder to lean on can solve some problems. As we're nearing the end of Season 1, that's a pretty handy bit of advice we don't often get from sitcoms. Despite Herman's job search, the whole premise is a bit more down to earth than many others. But it doesn't lose an ounce of its endearing spirit. And for that, I give this episode 10 skulls and a way overdue pay raise. 138. Yes, Galen, there is a Herman. Aired June 10th, 1965. This episode, also called My Friend Herman, sees human and monster become each other's imaginary friends. The idea of this little kid who Herman saved is just too wild to believe. Next thing you're gonna say, unicorns are real. Unfortunately, the little boy Galen has a harder time convincing his family that the Munsters are real, and winds up with a doctor's appointment for his troubles. Honestly, upon rewatching, I was kinda surprised that this is how they chose to end Season 1 and tie everything together. But still, I like the idea of both families not sure what to think of this totally not real person, and felt so exacerbated for Galen when nobody just listened to that poor kid. The season finale gets, 7 skulls from me, and the right to say, told you so for a month, maybe even 2. 2-1, Herman's Child Psychology. Aired September 16th, 1965.
Why don't you have another piece of pie? It's your favorite. Oh, you're gonna make me.
The doctor is in the house. When Eddie acts out, Herman takes the only route there is, playing child psychologist, only to get caught in a series of unfortunate mishaps. Hey, what's new? It might be Season 2, but you can still expect Herman to cause a whole bunch of chaos. And this episode is pure monster madness, with Herman's clueless parenting skills on full display. But keeping with the true wholesome feeling of Season 1, you do know it's all coming from a good place. And Herman is so typical Herman, getting distracted by a circus bear and such. Which, I know, relatable, huh? I mean, all in all, it's a really solid start to Season 2, and I do give Herman's Child Psychology 7.5 skulls out of 10. 2-2, Herman the Master Spy. Aired September 23rd, 1965.
Over 15 years, and I never saw a spy this ugly.
Herman. Life would be so boring without your antics. The family was all set for a fun trip to the beach, and then, whoops, Herman gets scooped up by a Russian fishing boat. And while he is immediate pals with the crew, everyone else is pretty sure this guy's a spy. But way before Rocky ended the Cold War, Herman was out here building bridges between enemies, and between humans and the fishies. Honestly, this was a refreshing twist on all the shows that touched on Cold War paranoia. but with a little Munster twist. So 8 skulls for the laughs and an extra half for the absurdity. 8.5 skulls out of 10. 2-3, Bronco Bustin' Monster. Aired September 30th, 1965.
I've been telling all the guys around the rodeo that you're the greatest rider in the world.
Now who doesn't always want to show off how cool their parents are? Well, if my dad was Herman Monster, maybe I would. And that's what Eddie wants to do as he pushes for Herman to enter a bucking bronco contest at the local rodeo. That's it, the Munsters have gone west. Well, of course Herman's not exactly trained in this, so he does get some help from Grandpa, which goes about as wild as you would expect. Now this episode is a complete hoot, and it sums up what made typical Munster madness so entertaining. There's magic, there's cowboys, and the Munsters. Honestly, this is one of my favorite early season 2 episodes, so I do give it 9 skulls, plus a lucky horseshoe for good measure. 2-4, Herman Monster, Shutterbug. Aired October 7th, 1965. So Herman takes up photography, but things go awry when his pictures reveal more than they should, like a bank robbery. And now the robbers want to get rid of all that evidence. Oh, no you do not, guys. Thankfully, it's Grandpa to the rescue. You know the drill.
Wait, who are those men running out of the bank carrying canvas bags?
We get a nice dose of seeing the Munsters and all their hilarious horror playing off normal people, plus Herman managing to stumble into yet another mishap. Yet the episode doesn't feel like the flash was on, so I do give it 5 skulls for making me develop my own film. 2-5, Herman Coach of the Year. Aired October 14th, 1965. The man, the myth, the Munster. Herman Monster starts coaching Eddie's baseball team, but his training methods leave a lot to be desired. Almost makes you miss the coach ordering laps around the entire school, don't it? But don't worry, Grandpa has something up his sleeve that'll save the day, and launch a few ethics inquiries, but shh, Eddie's on top of that too. Although I wanted to see more monster-specific mayhem, this was still a fun one, and ended up having a good message like so many Munsters episodes do. I rate it 7 skulls, enough for a solid triple. 2-6, Happy 100th Anniversary. Aired October 21st, 1965. I think every sitcom with a married couple is obligated to have at least one episode dealing with the all-important wedding anniversary, and the tried and true idea of at least one partner seemingly forgetting about it.
That means he's completely forgotten your wedding anniversary.
I know he did.
Definitely don't want to be in that spot. And you definitely don't want to be in the mess of misunderstandings that's in this episode. I wish parts of this were different. I enjoy misunderstandings, but you always want to see Lily and Herman stay faithful. But I do like the guest appearance of Foster Brooks as the Admiral. So with that little boost, I give it 7 skulls for the heart and humor and Foster Brooks. 2-7, Operation Herman. Aired October 28th, 1965. In this episode, Eddie is all of us when his entire day, week, year, life is ruined by news of needing tonsil surgery.
That pancreas is real boss, but those tonsils will have to go.
And, oh, okay, it's done and wasn't too bad. But here's Dad and Grandpa coming in to visit and giving the hospital staff a real medical mystery. I do think some of the best gags in this entire show are when regular folks react to the Munsters, and this one definitely delivered that, along with the plot being really relatable to other kids, which is a balance you wouldn't think the premise could pull off, but it of course does. And so, I diagnosed this episode with 8 skulls and prescribe a rewatch stat. 2-8, Lily's Star Border. Aired November 4th, 1965. Lily decides to take in a boarder who is immediately Mr. Popular, but maybe a jealous Herman has an edge on this mysterious guy with the mysterious job and the mysterious spy gear. But wait, there are enough twists in this episode to impress Agatha Christie. This episode shows Lily at some of her most take charge, tied neatly in a lacy gothic bow. Could have used a bit more monster weirdness, but I love the surprises. 7 skulls for the world's scariest Airbnb. 2-9, Doe Monster. Aired November 11th, 1965. When Herman Monster gets amnesia from the kinda Looney Tunes accident he could fall victim to, he ends up wandering around the city with no memory of who or what he is.
What's your name, mister?
My name? My name is...
In the weirdest twist in the vein of the all-time greatest Goldie Hawn movie, Overboard, Lily gets Herman back home, and the family tries to shock the memories back into Herman. In the end, fatherly love wins the day. Amnesia episodes are always hit and miss, but I think the Munsters put a twist on it we haven't seen before. Plus, I like that it was Eddie who ended up jogging Herman's memory. And so I give this one 6.5 skulls for not forgetting what's most important, family. 2-10, A Man for Marilyn. Aired November 18th, 1965. Marilyn's perpetual dating woes continue when Grandpa decides to take matters into his own hands by conjuring up a man for her.
If this potion works, Marilyn may meet her prince tonight.
But in true Munster fashion, magical misunderstandings abound when her frog prince doesn't show up how anyone expected. But he's sure to bring the authorities to help this normal lady held captive by these monsters. So obviously Grandpa's attempts at matchmaking are as doomed as you'd expect. Poor Marilyn just can't catch a break. Watching this over-the-top plan snowball out of control is like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It's terrifying, but you can't look away. I also really enjoyed seeing Dick Wilson in something that's not Mr. George Whipple and all those Charmin commercials. Yeah, that's how I know him. And so I'll give it 7 skulls for the lengths that this family will go to for poor, unlucky, normal-looking Marilyn. 2-11, Herman's Driving Test. Aired November 25th, 1965. Lucky Herman Monster. He gets a promotion to the hearse driver that requires him to renew his license.
Well, according to the date, this license expired.
The jury's out on how he ever got one in the first place, because that guy is not road safe. Enter the hero of the Munsters, Grandpa, to teach him like any dad teaching his little ones. We thought Herman Monster teaching his son Eddie would be the first time we see that kind of plot line, but nope. It's hard not to love the sheer mayhem of Big Herman behind the wheel. This is exactly the kind of wacky setup that's impossible to look away from. Plus, that twist at the end never fails to get a big laugh. This one gets a perfect 10 skulls for this joyride from hell. 2-12, Will Success Spoil Herman Monster? Aired December 2nd, 1965. Introducing the 5th Beatle, Herman Monster, belting out his rendition of Dry Bones, to his family's horror but to the delight of a nation that gets to hear it on the radio. Herman becomes the second coming of Elvis Presley overnight, and ouch, it's rough seeing how fame changes ya, Herman. Suddenly, everyone wants a piece of the tall, dark, and gruesome Monster, and Herman's ego swells to monstrous proportions. Like I said, watching Herman bask in his 15 minutes of fame is fun, but hard, especially when the fame inevitably goes to his head. But like all good things, it doesn't last. 9 skulls for this cautionary tale of fame and fortune, and songs to sing on karaoke night. 2-13, Underground Monster. Aired December 16th, 1965. It's Spot's turn in the spotlight, pun intended, and boy does the family pet make even more of a mess than Herman when he gets spotted in the sewers. Things go from 0 to 100 faster than blinking when the mayor decides to call in the big guns, literally.
Blast these so-called creatures out in the open.
Did anyone else feel their dog-owning defensive instincts just kick into gear in this episode? Well, the stakes are never higher than when the dog is involved. Or dragon, I guess. This episode just goes from one ridiculous escalation to another, and it definitely feels like the writers wanted a purely wacky fun time with this one. So, I will give it 6 skulls for the pure, over-the-top antics, plus a big box of dog treats for the goodest boy Spot. 2-14, The Treasure of Mockingbird Heights. Aired December 23rd, 1965. Nothing like a little father-son bonding time between the men of the house. Things start out so promising when Herman Monster and Grandpa go searching for a fuse box in the dungeon, basement. And then things get even more exciting when they maybe stumble upon long-lost treasure. But we've already seen glory and riches make good things turn too sour, even for the Munsters. And suddenly, this treasure is like the one ring to rule them all. This episode is like watching a bunch of kids play pirate, except somehow with even more demolition.
Caught you red-handed, you dirty crook!
Who are you calling a crook?
Thankfully, the Queen of Shadows herself, Lily puts an end to this mess in the absolute best possible way. I still smile and cheer. 9 skulls, mainly because you'd have hoped they learned their lesson by now. 215, Herman's Peace Offensive. Aired December 30th, 1965. Poor Eddie is dealing with bullying at school, while Dad keeps getting tricked by a practical jokester at work. Herman Monster preaches the old ignore them, take the higher ground approach, but their bullies don't care about being noble nearly as much. Cue the boxing lessons and a show of strength, and it actually kinda works. The question of how exactly to respond to bullies is a sadly way too relatable one. Fortunately, we have Lily at the end being a voice of reason and promoting peace. But I give this episode 6 skulls, and a visit to the principal's office for mean old Jack McGinty. 216, Herman Picks a Winner. Aired January 6th, 1966. Herman puts up such a good effort trying to teach Eddie a good lesson about the dangers of gambling.
To teach Eddie the folly of gambling.
Just slight hiccup when he does this by gambling, seemingly on a long shot, but oops. And now, Herman's lesson is lost, big time, thanks to winning big. And then the wise, philosophical Herman doubles down by betting again, and winning again. Or did he? Because it turns out, of course, Grandpa had a bit of a hand in all of this. It's a funny approach to an important lesson with some great moments, of course, from Grandpa, but it could have used a bit more silly monster scares. And so, I bet 6 skulls on this episode. Ah shoot, here we go again. 217, Just Another Pretty Face. Aired January 13th, 1966. I always knew world peace would be achieved by a suburban Dracula with a weird lightning zapping machine. Oh, nobody else? Well, it turns out this one was a dud too, and it gave Herman the makeover of a lifetime, turning him, normal. But wait, we can fix this. Nope, that's not it either. It needs to be one of those authentic, image-changing lightning bolts to work. Now this episode was a really great idea that was pretty darn well executed if I do say so myself. It was a perfect balance of goofy and outlandish, a dose of fantasy, plus a play on the Munsters all being actors and makeup. Not to mention my favorite guest star appearance from the entire series, with the hilarious Dom DeLuise playing Dr. Dudley. And so for all of that, this is my first 10 Skull episode, best so far from season 2. 218, Big Heap Herman. Aired January 20th, 1966. Another one that plays on the family's monstrous nature. This episode sees the family try for a relaxing vacation. But even Clark Griswold would think this is too much. Herman gets mistaken for an otherworldly spirit and might just be the ticket to more tourism. Until Lily swoops in to stop a surprise wedding. We really need to keep a closer eye on Herman. Fun and full of family and heart, this was another fun play on the Munsters' identity that gets a solid 6 skulls, plus a wedding interrupted. .219, The Most Beautiful Ghoul in the World. Aired January 27th, 1966. What would you do with 10,000 bucks? If you're Grandpa and Herman Monster, you try your hand at inventing new contraptions. If you're Lily and Marilyn, you start a business from the ground up. But as sitcoms go, if you're either of these teams, it doesn't go as planned. Fortunately, Grandpa's machine does technically make them money. Unfortunately, it's unusable. This was a refreshing mess to toss the Munsters into, seeing how they'd manage relatable dilemmas we dream or worry about. This earns it 8 skulls and an extra 10 grand to rebuild Grandpa's contraption. 220, Grandpa's Lost Wife. Aired February 3rd, 1966. When a lady puts an ad in the paper looking for Grandpa, we learn quickly that the real monsters in this world aren't the ones that look like a Halloween store come to life. The Munsters have their work cut out for them figuring out what this woman wants. And when Grandpa tries his luck at a bit of love and fortune, it turns out to all be a sham. Ouch.
Herman, I'm terribly sorry for walking out on my family.
This mid to late season 2 episode has got a surprising amount of twists, but I think it would have been nice to see more of this lady reacting to the Munsters besides trying to scam them, and so it only gets 4 skulls. 221, The Fae Emerald. Aired February 10th, 1966. Even the Munsters can be fearful of wayward magic, and that's exactly what seems to get unleashed on their spooky household when Eddie gifts Marilyn a cursed ring. But come on, there's no such thing as curses, right? Only vampires and werewolves. Well, a few more weird incidents later. Our frightening family is on a quest to fix this mess before it's too late. This episode is pretty cool, kinda for what it opens up. Like acknowledging things run deeper than what we see with the Munsters. And something about it definitely gives me Scooby-Doo vibes, I don't know. Anywho, this episode gets 7 spooky skulls and a totally innocent talisman, trust me. 222, Zombo. Aired February 17th, 1966. I mean, who doesn't love popping a bowl of popcorn, settling onto that couch, and then tuning in to the Zombo show? No? Well, Eddie knows what I'm talking about, and lucky him, because he got invited onto the show. But you know what they say, never meet your heroes. Now this was one of those setups that's fairly relatable and really well done, and it had a little nice message seeing Herman start off jealous.
I won't do it, I won't do it, I won't do it, I won't do it. I won't watch that dumb old Zombo.
But to Eddie, he'll always be cooler because he's not fake. Solid all around, but I do recall that my brother had nightmares from this episode. He did not care for Zombo. But anywho, it was a great episode and it earns 9 skulls and a new car. 223, Sireno de Monster. Aired February 24th, 1966. Turns out our friendly neighborhood Herman Monster is a poet, and we didn't even know it. And he's published in Mortician Monthly, who knew? But this makes a coworker recruit him to write love letters for his crush, Cyrano style.
Lips ruby red, skin pearly white, flames fed, day and night. I've got it. Don't go away.
Of course things go wrong when the girl falls for Herman instead, and Lily is of course less than thrilled. The situation quickly devolves into chaos, with Herman trying to fix the mess he's made. The whole setup is completely hilarious, contrast to the Herman we know, the hapless, lovable giant the show's done such a great job establishing. It's a testament to the great character work they've done, and a huge misunderstanding that creates a mess that gets tied neatly into a bow. For all-around solid execution, this episode gets 8 skulls and a ticket to poetry night at the graveyard. 224, The Musician. Aired March 3rd, 1966. If only we lived in a world with magic, it would solve everything, right? Not quite, as Eddie painfully learns when his grandpa turns him into a classical music master. But wait, he needs to pull that off again, and Grandpa forgot how to make the spell work. This episode may have had some of the most magic, but it also feels the most real. Not even realistic. Yeah, this would go wrong for me. Just my luck. It also goes to show cheating doesn't really win you anything. And for that, I give it a solid 7 skulls and a free trumpet lesson. Sorry, Eddie, but that playing is scarier than anything else on this show. 225, Prehistoric Monster. Aired March 10th, 1966. When the dominoes fall, there's no stopping them in this episode. Eddie enters his dad as a contestant for Father of the Year, which is just so wholesome and sweet. And look, Marilyn made a bust of him in art class. The big guy just keeps on winning. But I'm sure Herman Monster ran away with the Dad of the Year award, right? Nope, but authorities saw that bust and want to make some cash from discovering the missing link. The whole mess eventually resolves itself, but does raise some questions about just how hard it is for this family to go out and enjoy a normal day. For a fun dose of mix-ups, this episode gets 6.5 skulls, because it still stinks that our favorite dad got so disappointed from not winning. 226, A Visit from Johann. Aired March 17th, 1966. Every now and again, we're reminded of the real inspiration behind our kooky cast, and that's greatly included when Dr. Frankenstein comes to town, with Herman's cousin in tow. Now, Johann is just as frightfully large as Herman, and so it gives the Munsters an amazing setup for twins getting mixed up.
Herman, I've never seen you act this coy before.
Basically, we got a Munsters Parent Trap episode. And for that, this episode gets 7 skulls and another set of identical skulls to boot. 227, Eddie's Brother. Aired March 24th, 1966. The grass is always greener, even for the residents of Mockingbird Heights, so maybe the grass is always drier? In any case, Eddie wishes he had a brother, so he does what any of us would do and has Grandpa build a robot sibling.
If we lose one of the parts, we can borrow one of Boris's.
But Eddie quickly learns that being an only child definitely comes with perks, and the family is sure to tell him how loved he is. It's a formula we've seen before and saw again. In fact, Jimmy Neutron copied this almost one-to-one, complete with it being a robot brother. But it's repeated for a reason. It's good, and it's got some decent messages behind it, earning this episode 6 skulls and a spooky skeleton friend. 228, Herman the Tire Kicker. Aired March 31st, 1966. Herman decides to buy a new car, which of course means the family's going to end up with something straight out of the junkyard. Sorry, I mean Fair Deal Dan. Surprise, surprise. Of course the car's a lemon, a really, really rotten lemon, and it was stolen.
What about my car? It's on the hot sheet. It's a stolen car. All right, come along.
For some reason, enjoy your gift, Marilyn. I mean, I don't know why Herman trusted Fair Deal Dan. I've seen that guy before, and he's always got a riddle for you to solve. He really looks like a bad guy. But poor Herman, after this rolling death trap causes way more trouble than it's worth right off the lot. But the episode of course fixes everything pretty much on its own, with only a bit of monster mayhem tossed in. I do give this episode, which guest starred Frank Gorshin, 9.5 skulls for setting a new low for buyer's remorse. 229, A House Divided. Aired April 7th, 1966. A petty argument between Herman Monster and Grandpa leads to them dividing the house in half. And of course, that should be taken as literally as possible.
No, you don't. The phone is on my side of the line.
I remember doing this after my brother lost my G.I. Joe action figure. And now because Grandpa is part of the whole mess, he can't save the day. Don't worry, Lily steps up to the challenge with her usual haunting grace, aided by Marilyn, to get the family back together and get Eddie a new birthday gift. Her work is never done. Typical supermom stuff. 8 skulls for the sheer stubbornness on display, plus a flat tire. 230, Herman's Sorority Caper. Aired April 14th, 1966. Every now and again we get Grandpa starting as many problems as he fixes, and putting Herman into a trance to cure his hiccups is definitely a big example. Next thing you know, Herman gets taken in by some college students who think he's a cool statue and has to escape a sorority. Which goes over as well as you'd think with his wife. should have just drank water and counted to 10 backwards. This was definitely a fun one, complete with misunderstandings between humans and monsters, Grandpa foiling and fixing things with his magic, and Herman way out of his element. We also get star-studded guest stars, with Ken Osmond and Bonnie Franklin appearing in this one, and so it gets 7.5 skulls. 231, Herman's Lawsuit. Aired April 21st, 1966. Some of us were at least a little afraid for Herman Monster when he got hit by a car. Turns out, we should have been afraid for the poor car itself, but the driver didn't think so and offers thousands in exchange for not having the living daylights sued out of her. Except our poor Munsters think she's demanding that money as reparations for her destroyed car.
And now her lawyer wants me to pay her $10,000. What'll I do?
Eventually, the level-headed Lily gets it sorted out, but not before Herman hightails it out of Dodge. Episodes that play on the Munsters' monstrous appearance are always winners, and this was a solid way of playing on the fact that we're dealing with actual Frankenstein here. It's a surreal touch of realism in an absurd world, and for that, it gets 7 skulls and a car wash voucher. 232, the finale, A Visit from the Teacher. Aired May 12th, 1966. While Grandpa is trying his hand at a bit of civil engineering, Eddie reads a report to his class all about his normal, average, typical, regular American family, who happens to be monsters from Universal Studios. Yeah, just like Uncle Sam envisioned. Problem is, other people seem to think Eddie's story is a little on the weird side, and then they go to check things out. Just picture hearing about a kid's imaginary friend, only to find out, oh, it's been real this entire time, and it's even weirder than you thought. Honestly, this feels like a completely natural direction that the Munsters story would go, and I'm glad to see it play out in such a fun and satisfying way. This episode also had a tough job of closing out the second season. I'm happy to say this finale earned 9 skulls and a round of applause for closing out our series well. The show ended a lot like how it opened, wholesome, and I tip my wizard's hat to you. The Munster family, thank you for this time together. So, that was my time, my thoughts on the incredible Munsters family and the show. So, what did you think? Which episode from Season 2 did you really remember well? Was there an episode that I ranked way too high or way too low? And overall, did you enjoy Season 1 or Season 2 of the Munsters better? What about the films after? Please get in the comments section and tell us what you remember about the Munsters. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a memory. From my entire team here at Do You Remember, thank you so much for being here and have a wonderful day.